Hello there, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am Nicole Allen, and I'm sitting here with a powerful woman who is going to help us on our journey to a healthier version of ourselves. I'm here with Dr. Ann Doggett. Dr. Doggett, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad that you're with us. Listen, I'm going to take the moment out real quickly. This is a different kind of conversation, okay? And so I'm looking for our viewers to please be so kind to share this with the viewing audience, share this with your family, share this with your loved ones, because we want to make sure we are educating you and getting information out there that's going to help you, that's going to help your family, and those that are connected to you. Okay, so make sure you share. Now, listen, real quickly, Dr. Doggett, she has a background with an undergraduate studies from Bowdoin College. She has a master's degree in human nutrition from the University of Bridgeport, and she is a doctor of chiropractic from New York Chiropractic College. She also received her certified clinical herbalist certification from Phytotherapy Institute of Australia. Her areas of expertise are regenerative medicine, natural aesthetics, nutrient assessment and counsel, as well as comprehensive and diverse chiropractic techniques. Today, she is going to share with us about hormonal therapy, which is another area of expertise of Dr. Ann. And so I want you all to please, again, share this because I'm going to be asking her some questions. And I welcome you and your family to comment because we have people here who are helping us and they're going to be making a note of the questions that you have. So don't be afraid. Don't be shy. There's no question that is too crazy or too wild. All right. So we want you to comment on this live viewing, and we're going to go over those questions towards the end. A good 45 minutes to an hour, and Dr. Ann will be back to share more with us. Okay. So Dr. Ann, we're just going to dive right in. Before we get started in talking about hormones, please tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, people can hear, I can introduce you and share your educational background and all of your accomplishments. But sometimes people see, the glory of your life, but they don't understand the story, the background of your life. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your upbringing.
So I am the youngest of 8 children. I grew up with 6 older brothers and an older sister. And we grew up in the city of Boston. And my father was a Boston police officer. And I think I started at a very, very young age, just placing my hands on people and people telling me that it felt really great. So I think when I was younger, my mother's friends used to encourage me to become a massage therapist because, in fact, back 40, 50 years ago, that was something that, women might do if they had great hands.
Right.
I decided I wanted to be an OBGYN. I thought I wanted to welcome babies into the world. I love new life. I loved babies. And my high school science teacher encouraged me toward medical school. And I started really building, a resume to be able to get into school. And I participated in science fairs and really was driven for acceptance to a medical school. And during the process, I met chiropractors. And I met one in particular. I was at school at Bowdoin and I hurt my back running. And chiropractor who helped me said, "What are you doing? You can help people so much through this chiropractic profession." Wow. So I started to investigate a little bit, and I was working at the hospital and I was watching all the medical doctors stay up all night and have, limited family time. And I started to reassess, and that's when I switched gears and I went on to chiropractic college.
Wow, this is amazing. So how did we get to this place of us sitting here this evening to talk about hormones?
Oh, well, it came through my meeting you, of course, and having your wonderful input and determining how we could have a greater reach for this valuable information. I'll often have patients come in and they say, I wish I knew you.
Right.
5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because we give them the tools to make changes that impact their life so dramatically.
Yeah.
About 3 months ago, I completed a course in bioidentical hormone use. And I've helped women through various stages of hormonal changes, and men as well. Women are a little more vocal about the changes that happen with age, but it is true for men. And we've helped them with things like plant extracts. We call them phytoestrogens, for instance, that can help women as they go through a decline in hormones through different phases of life. But I've never used bioidentical. And for many decades, there was information that was circulating that would lead women to believe that if we chose to replace a hormone, that we may be putting ourselves at risk for other health issues. And so I kind of shied away from the direct replacement. And now that I've learned more and I've signed up and I'm watching the results with clients, I'm particularly excited to share the new knowledge.
This is great. I'm going to be sharing more, about the impact of Dr. Ann and her company here, WholeBody Solutions, as we near the end of this live streaming. But it has been such a powerful interaction, in so much that my life has changed. My health journey has shifted for the better, and this is why it's so easy for me to have this conversation with you. And, one of the things I often say, and you've heard me say it before, is, really being connected to someone that you believe in what they're doing, and because you believe in what you're doing,
Right.
And there's a scripture, I have to do it because I wouldn't be myself if I didn't do it. But in 1 Corinthians 6:19, it says, "Do you not know that your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own." And I think it's so important because oftentimes we look at that verse of scripture, and the way that we use it is as it pertains to sexual purity. And although that is applicable, it's also applicable in our health journey, how we're treating our organs, how we're treating our system, how we're exercising, how are we paying attention to our body. And so because WholeBody Solutions, from the inside out, is so involved, we're going to have a part 2, possibly a part 3. However, on today, we're going to focus on hormones. And again, I welcome you all to please, comment, and please write your questions, because we have viewers from Instagram as well as from Facebook and YouTube who are viewing. And we want to make sure we're getting this information out here. How can you make a decision if you don't know what you're making a decision about? How do you know what you're dealing with if you're not necessarily identifying what it is that you're faced with? So one of the first things we're going to ask Dr. Ann, it might sound like a silly question, but it's a real question. Can you please define hormones? And maybe in the same part, let us know, is there a such thing as good hormones and bad hormones? I've heard that phrase, that saying before. Would you mind expounding on that?
So first, by definition, a hormone is a compound that circulates from one area of the body to another to deliver a message or to stimulate an organ or tissue to actually produce or function in a certain way. So the most common hormone that we hear about is thyroid hormone, right?
Okay.
So your thyroid hormone is stimulated by your pituitary gland. So the pituitary sits here, the thyroid sits here. How do they talk to each other? They talk to each other because the pituitary will make a hormone that circulates in the blood that affects what the thyroid would do. Mm. And there are many different glands that make hormones or that are affected by the hormones made by other glands. So we have the hypothalamus, which we call the master. We have the pituitary, we have the thyroid, we have ovaries, we have adrenals, we have pancreas. All these organs have the ability to make hormones that circulate in the blood and affect other areas or tissues. Good hormones and bad hormones is an interesting narrative. The hormones themselves are neither good nor bad. We actually need them, and they are important. So insulin is a compound that we think about. We don't necessarily think about it as a hormone, but it functions like a hormone. It's made by the pancreas. It's produced in response to carbohydrates or foods that are broken down to sugar. We need insulin, right? We need it to get sugar from the blood into the cells So it's not the insulin that's bad.
Interesting.
It's when we have too much or when we have too little. And so it's the balance of those. And when you have too much insulin, for instance, your body will store fat for fuel, your body will tend toward inflammation, your body will age faster.
Diabetics.
And that is one of the ways that we think of a bad hormone, but it's actually a terrifically important hormone. It's really the imbalance of it. Our focus this evening, we're going to talk about some of the hormones that affect women through the different stages of life. And we hear about estrogen, we hear about progesterone and testosterone. Many times we think of that as a male hormone, but it is important for both genders.
Yes, this is wonderful. So as you heard, Dr. Ann mentioned women. I do want men to know that there is something here for you too. So stay tuned, but you do want to know what's going on in the life of your wife or your daughter. So,
or your sister.
Or
right?
your sister. That's right. So let's talk about this. The big M. Menopause. You know, how do we recognize when we're either perimenopause, in the thick of menopause? How do we recognize what we're approaching in our life? And especially being in the summer months, you know, I had a conversation with someone recently and we were talking, we're able to relate on this level. And one of the things that she asked me was, how are you handling this in this heat wave?
Right. Okay, so let's back up just a tiny bit.
Sure.
Okay, so there are times in life when our hormones change or shift in anticipation of the different roles that our body will have. So, for instance, when we enter puberty, the body's getting ready for our years of fertility. During those years, we will be producing eggs in the ovaries that can be fertilized for, reproduction and childbirth, and now those number of eggs that we get is limited.
Okay.
So when the ovaries are done releasing the number of eggs that it has, they're kind of done that particular job. The childbearing years are coming to a close and the demands on the body are going to shift.
Okay.
So a couple of the hormones that we mentioned, and I do want to mention testosterone in particular because, again, there are a lot of myths about hormones. There are a lot of misunderstandings. And a lot of people believe that testosterone is just a male hormone. It is not. It's equally important for women. During the childbearing years of the female body's life, estrogen is produced in larger amounts.
Yes.
After childbearing years, the estrogen levels drop. Now, there are receptor sites on different tissues for organs.
Okay.
And when we talk about estrogen, one of the tissues that has receptor sites is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, as part of its job, is to regulate temperature. Okay. So a lot of people talk about hot flash. We call them power surges. But these hot flashes are really a reflection of the hypothalamus not seeing that estrogen anymore.
Wow.
The levels are starting to drop. That hypothalamus also indirectly affects your metabolism. So why is it that, as you approach the end of the childbearing years, that you might have trouble losing 10 pounds that you never had before, so I'm eating the same, I'm exercising, or I'm eating less, and I can't seem to lose this 10 pounds. That's in part a reflection of a tissue, specifically hypothalamus, no longer seeing a hormone, specifically estrogen, and then shifting in the way that it functions. And we have lots of tissues that have receptors for hormones. So it could be the bone, and that is why women can be vulnerable to bone density issues as those levels drop of estrogen. But you also have the bladder and the kidney and the vaginal tract and the breast and the uterine. All these tissues have receptor sites. Yeah.
So my question is, because is there anyone else out there whose hypothalamus and estrogen not meeting and seeing eye to eye? So what do we do about this? What is, WholeBody solutions? What are one of the solutions that you have or that you would suggest that we do to circumvent this?
So there are many strategies. And one of the strategies is a lifestyle strategy. So as we go through the cycles of estrogen dropping, one of the glands that can continue to make estrogen is the adrenal gland.
Okay.
That gland is affected by our stress levels. Are we sleeping enough? Are we in healthy relationships? Are we feeding the body the right things? So sugar is a big topic of conversation in natural medicine and health, because sugar can deplete us of certain nutrients, our B vitamins, for instance, that are needed by that stress gland.
Okay.
If you enter menopause with a healthy stress gland, then you're going to make small amounts and the drop off is going to be less dramatic and bothersome. So that's one strategy that can take place in anticipation and as a general health measure to do things that can keep that stress gland healthy. For some people, it's exercise and meditation. Diet plays a role. Again, if we step back and we examine our lives, what do we have control over? What can we influence? Our relationships, the people we choose to be around, the structure of our day, making sure that we do things that keep us relaxed and healthy.
That's great. Now, is there certain products that you have as well, with maintaining our lifestyle and making sure we're giving attention to those things that can really increase the heat? Are there certain products that you have at WholeBody Solutions that can also assist us?
So this is another terrific and complex question. We have a lot of different strategies and products. We use plant extracts that are similar enough to estrogens where they can loosely bind to these receptors.
Sure.
And those can really often help organs and tissues to continue to function well. So Siberian rhubarb has phytoestrogen behavior. So we sometimes will use that product. Wild jam, which has a history in natural medicine of helping women through the menopausal time. The perimenopausal time, which can be, a year or 2 or 3 or 5. It can be an extended period. The herb chase tree or Vitex can be extremely helpful. If you start to have symptoms, whether they're anxiety, difficulty, sleeping, loss of libido, headaches, thinning skin, loss of glow, some of the fine lines above the lips, all of these indicators can tell us that we really might want to start replacing the hormone. And now I say we have this bioidentical possibility. And so we have serums that are bioidentical, meaning they are the exact same molecule that your body would make. They're applied topically on your thin skin areas. They're very, very small particle. We call them nanoparticles. So they get absorbed much better, more efficiently into the cells. They can make a change without high doses. So those topical serum products are terrific.
You use the term nanoparticles. Talk a little bit about that. Educate our viewers on the nanoparticles.
Well, there's different particle sizes for compounds. And say we take an oral supplement, and then we have to have the digestion in place. If it's protein-like, we have to have the acids from the stomach working well. We have to have sometimes fat-soluble compounds coming from our gallbladder. We need an intact digestive tube. There are lots of things required before that nutrient gets from the mouth actually to the tissue. That would be a macronutrient. On these nanos, they're broken down to such small pieces that the cell can receive them. They can cross the membrane of the cell much more efficiently.
This is so powerful because oftentimes we'll spend, and not discouraging people from seeing your primary care physician and and from the healthcare industry, but it's so important to know that there are some natural ways that you can care for yourself and get what you need to avoid having to take one medication after the other, because that had been my experience, taking one medication after the other until I met you.
Aha. And ultimately, in natural medicine, we're looking to identify the cause of the symptom.
Mhm.
So we really don't want to take a symptom away until we understand why you have it,
Yes.
because the body's brilliant
Yes.
and it gives us a symptom to tell us something's out of balance.
This is good.
So we don't want to just take it out of balance without understanding why we have it and what we really need to do to get to the root source.
So we need to get to know our bodies and pay attention to our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So can you speak to, we touched on menopause and how we could, treat that. There are just quite a number of different symptoms that people are faced with that sometimes we kind of treat it lightly. We don't think that holistic healthcare or wellness like WholeBody solutions could help us remedy
I know.
our issues. And we'll talk about my parents in a minute because I give you updates on them often. But one of the things that is really common today that a lot of people may not talk about, or they treat it as if it's normal, that's high blood pressure. And whether it's because of their eating habits or hypertension, these are other concerns that can be hormonal, related as well. And I'd just like for you to really speak to high blood pressure, hypertension, and how we can treat those things as well.
Again, for any symptom, there are multiple potential factors that influence. In natural medicine, when we think about blood pressure, we think about the function of the kidney, we think about the function of the liver, and now we think about the level of the hormones. And there's a particular compound that we've come to test everybody for in our office once we saw the value of this healthy levels, and that's nitric oxide. This is a compound that influences the blood vessel dilation.
Okay.
So if you have a vessel and it's narrow, the heart has to work harder to push blood through it.
Wow.
But if you have a vessel that is open and flowing well, then it's less work for the heart. Nitric oxide affects the vessel flow. Okay, so that compound can be found in certain foods. So we encourage people to eat beets and collards and arugula and Swiss chard and
Say it again. I heard something.
Collards.
Yeah.
So they're
I
loaded with nutrition. They're one of the better foods to eat.
Collard greens are loaded with nutrition.
How do you prepare your collards?
If I tell you my full recipe, I have to come and get you. But I actually, will season the water.
I see.
And I'll smoke some turkey, put some smoked turkey in there. And then I'll add the greens afterwards. Okay. And I'll let it cook for a little bit. And then I'll let it boil out a little bit. And, and do that.
If you're going to let it boil, you better drink the water because all the nutrients go in that water.
So boiling. I was going to ask you to, talk to me about that. So how do we cook collard greens to in a way that we're not taking out the nutrients? Right.
So less time and heat is better for enzymes and nutritional content, unless you are making a soup of some type, and then you are going to have the actual liquid that goes along with it.
Okay.
So a little important fact is there. So we're talking about nitric oxide, and there are foods that have nitric oxide, and a lot of people will enter the office and they will be really surprised that they're showing deficient levels on the tests that we do, because they are eating foods that actually should be rich.
Yeah.
But what we found is that the nutrient content is affected by the soil, and the soil can vary across the country. Mm-hmm. So if you have your collards that are grown in North Carolina, they might be very rich in nutrition. But if it's grown in upstate New York, maybe not so much.
Right.
And so this is why on this particular compound, we do find it's helpful to test and really determine where that person is at. We can tell on a color strip if they're very deficient or if they're just low or if they're at the target. And so this is really helpful. We have another class of vegetables that are called cruciferous, and that's broccoli and kale and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and cabbage. And those relate really intimately to the processing of estrogens through the liver. if we ate 2 cups of broccoli or kale a day,
Yeah.
and collards are close in terms of some of the nutrient density, we would really encourage our estrogen to move through the liver through to a healthier byproduct.
This is great.
So that's something that we have real control over. And we've done studies where we collect the urine of a patient and we check the level of this one particular metabolite of estrogen called 2-hydroxy. If women have more of that in their urine, they tend to have fewer estrogen dominant illnesses. So that could be breast cancer, it could be uterine issues, it could be fibrocystic breast, these number of different ways that will manifest from too much estrogen as opposed to the balance of estrogen and progesterone. You need a balance.
This is good. So we have to go here because we're going to one thing to the other. And listen, please share this. Okay. This is so important. And, getting to know your body and getting to know how you can take care of your body. I'm telling you, in the time that we live in, this is really important. And please, as you're listening, feel free to ask questions in the comments because they're being monitored, and we have people here who are helping us, and they're going to take those questions and share it with us so that Dr. Ann can answer some of those questions before we end tonight. Okay, Dr. Ann, you mentioned the estrogen and the progesterone. Talk about this connection between estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone.
Well, let's stick with the first two because those two affect, they affect one another.
Okay.
So when we talk about estrogen dominant illnesses, what we think about in those situations is the body's seeing too much estrogen. And that can happen for a number of different reasons. It can happen because we're making too much. It can happen because the liver's not clearing it quite well, or it can happen because there's not enough progesterone to oppose it. And so, again, that's a type of imbalance that can lead to symptoms that are bothersome. It's 92% of American women have symptoms that occur before the menstrual cycle starts.
Wow.
92%. So we think that it's normal. It's common, but that doesn't make it normal.
No, that's good.
The common is a lot of women suffer. They believe that it's probably normal because they hear a lot of other people have these problems, but it's really an indicator that something's out of balance. It could be a little bit out of balance or a lot out of balance. And either way, we have strategies to assist.
This is really good. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And so we have to learn to not adjust to things that would be dysfunctional with our body.
Right. You did mention testosterone. So I will say it's an important hormone as well. It is important for our muscle mass. And as we age and that testosterone level drops, we can lose muscle mass, both genders. So that is it's a very key factor for testosterone, because if you lose muscle mass, then you can have trouble with balance. And then if you fall and you have a broken bone, the sequelae, or the things that happen after these events, can really be impactful on our quality and quantity sometimes of life.
This is great. So Dr. Ann, you spoke of estrogen. You said estrogen related illnesses. What would be an example of such?
I think breast cancer is probably the most common thing we think about. But there are other things like fibrocystic disease. Sometimes there's conditions like irregularities in the menstrual cycle. There can be heavy menstrual bleeding. There can be infertility. There's so many manifestations of imbalances.
So tell me, this is what I want to get to. I want to get to, while we're having these imbalances, and while we're going to be changing the habits in our lifestyle for the better. You gave us some tips. You talked about us paying attention to stress levels. You talked about, paying attention to, our cycles and the cycles of life. And also even about life's experiences that can kind of weigh down and cause our bodies to physically react in such a way. You and I were having a conversation the other day, and we were talking about how traumatic experiences, because I want to get to the products. That's why. Um, but you were talking about traumatic experiences in our lives can impact us health wise.
100%. So we think about the brain and how important the brain is in terms of top-down function, and also the stress glands themselves. So your adrenal glands under a trauma will start to produce high amounts of cortisol.
Yes.
And cortisol has many effects. It can affect your blood pressure, for instance. So that's trauma, brain influence on endocrine system is very intimate connections there.
Okay. So how can we connect with you um, in regard to what would a consultation look like with you? If I call the office and I share with them, pardon us, everyone, it's undeniable, but that there's something going on
And background noise
in the background, but we're at the office and there's another business that's close by. But prayerfully, you could hear us just fine. So, how if I were to schedule a consultation, and at that consultation, I'm meeting with you and I'm sharing with you all of my symptoms that I'm having as a woman, things that I've already shared with you. And Dr. Ann says, we can fix that. Share with me what that visit would look like for that person whose energy level is extremely low. They're feeling tired, they're feeling fatigued, and really most times we associate it with we're doing so much. So we associate being exhausted with what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's associated with our body's energy level.
So fatigue has multi factors. So it could be, are you sleeping soundly? One of the things that happens with low levels of progesterone is interrupted sleep. You enter perimenopause, menopause, you've fallen asleep, you're waking up at 2, you can't get back to sleep until 4, you finally get back to sleep, and then you have to get up. And so that interrupted sleep, or those lack of steady, healthy patterns in circadian cycles, when you finally have to get up at 6, you don't really feel like taking a walk, going to the gym, preparing your food for the day, because you're tired. Okay, so that is something that can be directly connected to a hormonal imbalance. And that is one of the most dramatic things that we see with the use of our serum progesterone. People are able to fall asleep and stay asleep and feel more relaxed through the day and feel less anxious and less irritable. Other things matter. So what are you eating during the course of the day? Are you getting protein? So chicken, fish, turkey, lean red meats, eggs, or are you going for carbohydrate food? If you're having pizza, if you're having pasta, if you're having big sandwiches with a lot of bread, that's going to cause your insulin from your pancreas to go high.
Yes.
Then your sugars are going to leave your blood and they're going to go low in the blood.
You mentioned bread.
Yeah. So bread, most breads, even the wheat or healthy breads, because we've genetically modified the grains through which we make our bread, they can cause our insulin to shoot high. And under the influence of high insulin, your body will store fat for fuel, your body will become inflamed. And ultimately, when the insulin goes high and all the sugar leaves the blood and goes into the cells, you're left feeling tired. And that's why you reach for your sugar, because the sugar gives you a temporary increase in energy, but it's temporary and it's setting a cycle for abnormal physiology where you're going to crave, you're going to feel better for a short period, you're going to drop, and then you're going to crave again. So it would be much better to be choosing combinations of protein and fat. We talked about a green fruit earlier, avocado, which is really terrific to pair with the protein. Fats, not all fats are bad. In fact, fats are essential. So you want to pick things like healthy fats, whether it's coconut or avocado or non-processed healthy oils like the olive oils, avocado oils. We could have another whole discussion on oils, but we really want to be eating protein, vegetables, and healthy fats.
Touch on the oils.
So things like a pasture butter, excellent. Olive oil, excellent. But we have a lot of these seed oils, and there's some controversy about how healthy they really are, even though they may come from a seed, because they're processed. Healthy fats are vulnerable to things like oxygen and light and heat. So what that means is if we have a fat and we expose them to things, they can become rancid and they taste bad.
Mhm.
And then they also don't work the same way in the body. So because of this, these essential fats, so in nutrition, essential means the body needs it. The body doesn't make it. Without it, we become sick and diseased. Therefore, we must consume it through diet. So there are essential fats, and there are two categories of them, omega-3 and omega-6. These essential fats are very vulnerable to heat, oxygen, and light. So when we started to commercialize our food, and we said, okay, we're going to ship this food from North Carolina to Boston, those essential fats don't taste good by the time they hit your mouth. So what do we want to do about that? We want to make them taste good.
Right.
So if we heat them to a high temperature and we break the hydrogen bonds and we hydrogenate them, they stay stable, they taste better, but they're terrible for the body and the health.
Wow.
And so this is an issue with fats, and then on a more recent level, these seed oils, which are used quite commonly, whether it's sesame seed or sunflower seed, or the seed oils are not always healthy.
So I didn't want to stop you. I'm not stopping you. I know, I'm feeding off of what you're sharing with us, because it could be that there's certain things that we're taking in that we're unaware of, especially because like I'm big on, olive oil, vegetable oil.
So let's talk about that. So olive oil can be
margarine. I want to put that in there too.
Okay. Olive oil can be a really healthy oil. I use a lot of it. It's only when we heat it to a high temperature that we're altering the health of that oil. So if you have a salad, you want to dress it, olive oil. If you want to saute your greens quickly in olive oil, maybe even, I would much rather see you do butter than margarine. So margarine is typically, these butter substitutes are hydrogenated oils that have been heated to high temperatures, that have been altered and do not serve the function in the body that we need for fats. So we use a pasture butter, use coconut oils, use your olive oil, not cooked or lightly cooked, but never high temperature. Those are good, healthy fats.
This is great. Dr. Ann, we've been doing this for almost 40 minutes. I want you to just take a few more moments out and just generally speak to our viewing audience about, thank you, we have help. Speak to our viewing audience, about what they could do, what more they could do, how they can connect with you. WholeBody Solutions, real quickly, is exactly that. WholeBody Solutions is whole body solutions. So from hormones, as I aforementioned when I was introducing Dr. Ann, to aesthetics, as it pertains to Emcella, Emsculpt, and other treatments, facials. She is treating the entire body, regenerative medicine, chiropractic care, acupuncture. These are all things that are nurturing to the whole body. And especially for many of us who serve people, or serving in whatever capacity that we serve in, you really want to put your best foot forward. One thing that stood out to me, and I can stand witness that I probably started out that way, because I remember probably a little over 10 years ago, my former primary care physician, no longer, but that's fine, have a great primary care now. And she wanted to put me on blood pressure medicine. And initially I was just like, I can't do that. I'm not going to do it. And I ended up doing it. And it slowed me down. I was an avid runner, over 20 miles a week. And it slowed me down to the degree that, it depressed me. The blood pressure medicine, my body did not respond well to it. It increased my weight. My weight gain was rapid, and it slowed me down, tremendously. And so having to deal with that, not for like a season, for years, and to overcome that has been such a journey, because it's not as easy to lose as it was to gain. And so really embracing this health journey and not looking at it as I want to lose so fast,
Yeah.
but really pacing yourself. The other piece, though, there was something that you said, about, losing sleep and getting up in the middle of the night because of the effects of fatigue, but really, and also starting your day tired.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So having healthy energy levels is going to impact everything, your choices, your relationships, your productivity. On those days that sometimes we'll have interrupted sleep. So it's not the occasional thing that happens. It's the thing that's happening consistently that makes a difference. And that's with anything, whether it's your food choice. If you want to eat 5% for fun, but you're eating 95% for your good health, go for it.
Right.
And the same thing with your sleep. If you're interrupted on a regular basis, all your decisions are going to be altered. In terms of blood pressure, having a measured value out of balance is something that has to be looked at. So we're not suggesting that you ignore a symptom, but trying to determine where that symptom is coming from,
Right.
to understand what you can do to correct the underlying problem. And there's a place for medicine. There are many times things that we can do without a medication that can return us to good, healthy function. And if we try those first safely and with good monitoring, many times the results are terrific. For blood pressure, nitric oxide assessment is important.
Yeah,
so sometimes just checking that nitric oxide and making a slight adjustment, both through a supplement and also through dietary intake, that can be extremely helpful. I've seen and learned through my more recent studies some of the kidney and bladder functions that are affected by your hormone balance. And we see with the aging female, sometimes these urinary tract infections that can not always, they can go undetected. So an older person may think that certain things are normal because they're common the same way. So we want to really ask if something's not feeling right. Is it common, or really is it trying to tell us that something's out of balance that we can correct?
This is good. Two more things that I'd like to address before we end, and that is for men and for seniors, because perhaps you can touch on the seniors first, because we'll save the men for last. To me, we're saving the best for last. but and also because most men wouldn't see, when they hear hormones, they make it applicable to, this is for the ladies, this is for women.
There's a pause in the male hormones. We call it andropause. Very often the testosterone will drop, and it's very important. And we can assist that as well in similar ways to the way we help women. We don't have a serum topical testosterone nanoparticle. And we will get seniors, because look, as the body ages, certain things change.
Yes.
You did ask about seniors. One of the things that can happen is our digestion of protein gets affected with age.
Yes.
The parietal cells in the stomach make something called hydrochloric acid, which is important to break down our proteins into compounds that we can absorb and use, and in particular for muscle mass. And so the loss of muscle mass, which is part of a disease called sarcopenia, which is common with aging, can happen in both genders, and can happen for the senior in particular. The drop in testosterone, which again affects both genders, but in particular, we think about muscle mass, we think about libido, we think about motivation. All those things can, and it's important for both genders. So other things that happen with seniors, it's very, very important to stay connected with community. Community is actually the number one key component for healthy aging.
Say it again.
Yeah, staying connected to community.
Community.
So more than diet, more than nutrition, more than exercise, although all those things are dramatically important for our health, when we really look closely at how somebody ages in a healthful and happy way, connection to community. So it's important. We treated a patient 3 weeks ago who was 78-year-old male. He wanted to continue to play golf. He had pain in his elbow with golf activity and other physical activities. He went to 2 major medical institutions in the Boston area. He wanted surgery on his elbow to correct a problem so he could play golf. They told him he was too old. Now he came here. We did a regenerative medicine injection.
This thing is
with
powerful.
And so I guess my message is, when we have a symptom at any age, we really want to look at why we have that symptom. Is the body trying to tell us something? What is the root cause? Is it physical? Is it chemical? Is it emotional? Is it spiritual? These things are equally important. You cannot affect one without affecting the other. And there's nothing that's too late, and there's no one that's too old. And even the services we do here, there's no one that's too young. We've seen babies on their way home from the hospital here. And maybe they're not latching to nurse well, or maybe they're colicky, or maybe their parent had such a good chiropractic experience, they want to make sure their baby's starting off well. So any age, any gender, any race, any religion, we really want to help you experience your best possible self.
This is great. My parents, I was listening to you talk about a particular program with Quicksilver, and it was the
Triplicity. So Quicksilver is a company that we worked with more recently that uses these small particles, these nanoparticle delivery. And so what we found is these particles have more access into the cell, and so effects can be seen faster.
Yes.
And sometimes people get a little bit tired of taking pills. Maybe they don't want to take a pill. Maybe they don't swallow things well or easily, or maybe they've taken a lot for a long time. And this company's products came to my attention, and I started using them and seeing some terrific impact. And there's a compound that's made by the cell, NAD, which is important for energy and energy production, drops off as we age. And there are different ways to deliver NAD to the body. Some people use powder, some people take it IV, some people inject it into the muscle. But we know that when you have more energy, and you have more strength. Rob Gronkowski, who was treated by my former partner, Richard Ambrosic, he used to take the NAD IV, and it's powerful. It's not, and he found that it really helped him to be stronger on the field.
Supplement.
So we started working with this nanoparticle delivery, and one of our patients who recently turned 80 is very physically active and enjoys complete vitality, engaging in work relations and engaging in physical activity and long bike rides. And, we actually gave this package to him for his 80th birthday.
This is great.
Yeah. And within probably 5 days, he called, he said, "Could this be working this fast? I feel like Superman." And so, again, there's different compounds in this particular package. One of them is NAD in a delivery of small particles that can get into the cells. You can take that product and you can feel like you have more energy within 25 minutes.
Dad said, listen, he was like, "What was that stuff?" He said, "Let me tell you, I don't know what it is," but he goes, "I have so much energy."
Right.
My mother shared the same thing. And, the products from WholeBody Solution is just absolutely phenomenal. And, again, like I said, I don't know if you want to give our viewers, a tour, because we're winding down. I don't know if there are no questions. If you all don't have any questions, we're going to just, we're going to move on. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just share just a little bit. I'm going to say it again of what WholeBody Solutions offers. But before we move on to that, I just want to make sure that no one has questions about hormones. I'm sorry. There is one more thing I want to discuss. It's the big S word. SEX. Ooh, did I say that? Well, the reason why I'm saying it is because, my father said to me when we were growing up, my siblings and I, he would hug on my mom. My father's just big on PDA, public display of affection. And, you know, my mother's, you know, always reserved, but they were always lovey-dovey, you know, lovey-dovey when we were growing up. So we always saw them loving on one another. And he would say to us, you know, my sister would be like, oh, Daddy, stop. And he'll say, what you think, you got here by radar? You know? And so we know that none of us got here by radar, okay?
No storks, no
There's,
birds
there's
flying
no other
down.
immaculate conception.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that I really love about this place here, like I said, it deals with the whole body. And I also understand that I don't expect all men to comment or give feedback, but you can call 617-328-6300, 617-328-6300, and ask for a consultation with Dr. Ann Doggett. And no one would ever have to know you called, or go to the website of WholeBodySolutions.com and see what they have to offer. But I would like for you to touch on some of the challenges that people face sexually. There are marriages that have been challenged sexually, or maybe lack of interest sexually, you know, all of these things from both parties, from both the husband and the wife. So if you don't mind just kind of expounding on that, and what kind of treatments, what kind of remedies do you have?
So you have to have good energy, number one,
you.
right? So you have to have
That's
good
right.
energy, which is the fatigue issue. You have to have healthy hormonal levels, because they will actually drive libido. So that sex drive, or that desire, can be an indicator of hormonal imbalance. We have to have healthy pelvic floor strength. Sometimes post-childbirth, we're affected, women in particular, on the post-childbirth piece. You need to strengthen up the muscles again. We have a tool called Emcella, which is FDA certified, using magnets to build pelvic floor health and strength. Again, we mentioned men have to have good, healthy testosterone. If that's low, that will decrease function. You have to have desirability, which, you know, the other thing is carving time out for your partner, and connecting on non-sexual levels to increase desire. All these things are important, you know. So what we can do is we can make sure that the systems are working well in terms of hormone production, in terms of sleep, and in terms of motivation for physical fitness, so we can continue to feel good about ourselves.
Yes.
You know, I feel like feeling good about yourself is a big part of it, and how you relate and how you're spending your time, and again, all the things that we talked about, your lifestyle choices, and, you know, all that kind of impacts.
Okay, wonderful. Dr. Ann, you have a couple of products sitting here.
Well, I chose my newest favorites. I'm always learning and always evolving in response to the needs of the clients and things. But these are the nanoparticle hormones products that we're talking about. This is progesterone. It just pumps right out of the bottle, and you would rub it into your thin skin areas. That could be your forearms, it could be your temples, it could be the back of the knees. Very, very easy to use. Most of these products, depending upon the stage that you're in with your hormonal fluctuations, would be a pump in the morning and a pump or two at night. Very easy, very quick to use, very easy to put in your bag if you're going to travel or whatever. So those are the bioidentical Biest, which has 2 estrogens in it, and progesterone.
Talk about, there's one more component in that triplicity.
Membrane mend, maybe?
The membrane mend. Talk about that membrane mend.
So anytime that you have damage to a tissue, which can happen from, say you got a virus, you know, the virus can affect a tissue, say the brain, or maybe you have bonked your head, right? Or, you know, something happened where we want to repair. Yeah. And we also want to clean up dead cells. That's a process called autophagy. I don't know if you and I talked about this, different patterns of cycles of timed eating and all. But cleaning up dead cells is important. Repairing damaged cells is important, and that's all part of different protocols. This company, Quicksilver, that uses this nanoparticle delivery, one of the products that we found most useful is a compound that helps the liver to move toxins. It's called glutathione. You do the pumps right in the mouth. You hold these nanoparticles in the mouth for 30 to 90 seconds so that they can be absorbed directly. And that helps your liver to push. We have two different phases that a toxin has to be processed through the liver before we can eliminate it. And sometimes that second part can get stuck or be difficult for people.
Yeah.
So that phase 2, the first part, the toxin has to become water soluble. Most people, their livers do that quite efficiently, but then we have to combine it with something so we can eliminate it. And glutathione is very important for that piece. Some of us, I know personally, I had my genetics assessed. I don't have the enzyme that activates that important compound. I'll be very vulnerable to toxic fumes and things like that. If you take the glutathione and nanoparticles right under the tongue, it'll help that liver just move the toxins through, and that's part of a lot of these protocols.
Yeah. This is not magic. This is nothing alternative to faith. This is us working to make sure that we're remaining healthy and finding natural ways and supplements to assist us in that process. And this is just powerful. In the long run, it'll beat that surgery, that operation. And the next time I talk with Dr. Ann, we're going to schedule some time with her. We're going to be talking about regenerative medicine, and we might need to do a part 2 and part 3, Dr. Ann, because we definitely want to take some time out with regenerative medicine and let you expound on that and the miracle of that. God places doctors here for a reason. We know that Luke was a physician who traveled with the Apostle Paul in the book of Acts, and he wasn't just there as a conveyor of the gospel, but he was there also because he was able to confirm the miracles that took place. And you have to understand that, there's a scripture in Proverbs 18 that says, death and life is in the power of the tongue, and they that speak it shall eat the fruit. So not only do if our words have creative power, that means that we can speak over our body, and we can also be attentive to our body and pay attention to what our body is telling us. Sometimes you say something's not right or something doesn't feel right. Listen to your body. Pay attention to that. And anything you have questions about, we know that Google is our friend. But now I'm introducing you to the thing that we're actually looking for in Google. Here she is. Here she is. Initially, we were talking about whether or not we wanted to do a tour of the office, but I really do think that this is a good time to do it. It's a nice, lovely, modern office, intimate setting, very classy, and it's going to show you the room where aesthetics treatments take place, also where the regenerative medicine is, and even some of these products here, all of these things are here. Dr. Ann is absolutely phenomenal. She makes supplements and blends right here in the office. So we're going to pass the bar. It's not an alcohol bar. We're going to pass the bar, and we're going to see where all the magic happens. Let's go. I'm going to follow you, Dr. Ann. Don't get me. Oh, there we go.
These are our liquid blends. We can combine 2 to 5 for people for multiple areas of treatment and concern. This is the room where we use technology to stimulate the body to start making compounds again, like collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid, keeping the skin tight and lifting, keeping the skin hydrated, helping with spot reduction for sun damage and hair removal for those who desire that.
This is great. This is
Yeah,
phenomenal.
in the back we have our medical grade freezer where we keep our live biologic cells for our regenerative medicine. A lot happens in this particular space.
I had something done, a laser hair removal myself last week.
This room, we have our technology that uses magnets to help build muscle and to reduce area fat safely. This Emsella chair is, we talked about, for pelvic floor health, both male and female, uses magnets in the seat to build the strength of the muscles. That can be to control bladder, but also for your sexual experience completely on this Emsella chair. This technology, very similar, uses high intensity focused electromagnetics and you can treat areas by building the muscle, abdominal, glutes, thighs. We can treat inner thighs, outer thighs. Smaller paddles can help with the arms and calves. This technology is another aesthetic tool for helping stimulate collagen production in the body, also for dry eye and different applications for that. Beautiful.
Let's show them the blend area. We can have it pulled out for here. Please follow Dr. Ann.
This is our herbal apothecary. We import our herbs from Australia and New Zealand. They're pharmaceutical grade. Not all herbs are created equal. So if you're purchasing an herb from GNC or CVS, you may not be getting a compound that's regulated. These are regulated by the government, which means we know what's in there. There's enough of the compounds that can make a difference in the body, and there are no impurities that can cause harm. So we like the herbs that are regulated because we know they're the most effective and safe. So we choose to get them from companies that have practices to ensure the safety and effectiveness of the herbs. Sometimes people will want to treat their energy level and also their hormones, or their energy level and their sleep, or their blood pressure and their blood sugar. And so we can determine what a person needs, and we can combine multiple therapies into one and customize it for the client's needs. That's what happens here.
This is what happens here, and this is Whole Body Solutions. Again, like I said, we're going to do a part 2, possibly a part 3 if it's necessary, with Dr. Ann to discuss the rest of what Whole Body Solution does in detail. But I thank you so kindly for joining us. You can find Dr. Ann at www.wholebodysolutions.com, www.whole, W-H-O-L-E, body, solutions.com. You can also call 617-328-6300. My name is T. Nicole Allen, and I endorse this entire conversation. Thank you so kindly for joining us, and we'll see you again very, very soon. God bless you all.